Hi, welcome to day 16 of our 20-day Genesis read through. So you're on the final week, the last 5 videos. You are so close to being all the way through Genesis. So just stick with us for this last week. This one's entitled More Misery, because we started our story of Joseph, and he has been sold into slavery by his brothers who hate him. And to be honest, it doesn't really start getting any much better from there. Going to be reading from the NRSV again, the New Revised Standard Version, and we'll have some thoughts about it at the end. Hope you enjoy it. Genesis 39. Now Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer to Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites, who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. He was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favour in his sight and attended him. He made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he had made him overseer in the house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had, in the house and in the field. So he left all of it in Joseph's charge, and with him there he had no concern for anything but the food that he ate. Now Joseph was a handsome and good-looking man. And after a time his master's wife cast eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my hand. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept anything back from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not consent to lie beside her or to be with her. One day, however, while he went into the house to do his work, and while no one else was in the house, she caught hold of his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. She called out to the members of her household and said to them, "See, my husband has brought among us a Hebrew to insult us. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out in a loud voice, and when he heard me raise my voice and cry out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Then she kept his garment by her until his master came home. She told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to insult me. But as soon as I raised my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." When his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, saying, "This is the way your servant treated me," he became enraged. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. He remained there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him his steadfast love. He gave him favour in the sight of the chief jailer. The chief jailer committed to Joseph's care all the prisoners who were in the prison. And whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The chief jailer paid no heed to anything that was in Joseph's care, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. Genesis 40. Some time after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he waited on them. And they continued for some time in custody. One night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, and each dream with its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in the custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms came out and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hands." Then Joseph said to him, "This is its interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it is well with you. Please do me the kindness to make mention of me to Pharaoh, and so to get me out of this place. For in fact, I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should have put me in a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favourable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating out of the basket on my head." And Joseph answered, "This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a pole, and the birds will eat the flesh from you." On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his cupbearing, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hands. But the chief baker he hanged, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. Okay, so the next 2 chapters in Joseph's life. Forgive me that I'm stumbling over Joseph's name pretty much every single time I say it, because I want to say Joshua. But I do mean Joseph, and I will say Joseph and not my little boy Joshua. What can we say about these? There's quite a few things to mention about the way that Joseph conducts himself when everything goes wrong. I mean, he seemed to be an extremely proud character, and we think, oh, maybe he ought not to have told his brothers and his father that he was going to be in charge of them. But he takes the knocks, very well. And also you do get this feeling, even though he's successful in all that he does. I mean, the text keeps saying, well, it's because the Lord's favourable to him. And he doesn't get to that place where you feel that they're saying, he felt he'd done it under his own power. And all too simply and easily, don't we get to the stage where we think we do everything under our own steam and our own power? I know that I'm continually telling my daughter, it's all right, it's great to be doing well in school, that's fantastic, but you do need to know as well that you didn't actually make yourself clever. You didn't give yourself that ability, and whatever it is in life that you're good at, you can be proud of the gifts that God have given you, and you should be celebrating what God's given you, but remembering that God gave it you, because I think that's what makes Joseph far more amenable to where he finds himself in life, because he doesn't think he's owed anything. I mean, that's what's really important about God's grace. None of us deserve anything, but God graciously gives us plenty more than we can imagine. But equally, when life gets tough, well, we don't deserve anything. I think we all as humans like to say, oh, well, I've worked hard for this, I deserve this, this, this and this. I've done this thing, so I therefore am entitled to something else. And actually, when we look biblically, that's just not the case. God expects us to follow him and expects us to do right. So God expected Joseph not to sleep with Potiphar's wife. And God does bless him. But at no point is it because his actions are deserving of blessing. It's not that God blesses anyone. God just blesses. But we can't say, oh God, you owe me this, this and this because I have been faithful to you. Which is an important thing for us to learn as we go through these texts. I still think though Joseph has amazing forbearance, because I think I would have been getting slightly annoyed at this point. God, come on, set me free. Get me out of this prison. God, why did you let my brothers sell me into slavery? Yes. So, hopefully maybe you find some sympathy. Maybe you identify with the character of Joseph. So whatever it is, have a think about it. Mull some stuff over, and you'll be ready for our next day where we continue the story of Joseph.